At least 43 people, including 15 children, are now known to have been killed in flash flooding in Texas. Rescue teams are searching for more than 20 girls still missing from a summer camp that was struck by fast-flowing waters.
No one expected a British prince to make headlines for all the wrong reasons in the middle of one of America's deadliest natural disasters. But on July 6, 2025, in the heart of Central Texas, Prince Harry's uninvited appearance at a high-level flood relief meeting ended in humiliation. According to confirmed local sources, the Duke was thrown out by Mayor Joe Herring Jr. after being labeled useless in front of top officials scrambling to contain the devastation. This moment wasn't just a clash of protocol, it revealed a deeper resentment among American emergency responders toward what they saw as Harry's performative involvement in U.S. affairs.
As far as the number of people that may be lost, maybe the number of fatalities, as you mentioned, they have confirmed some fatalities. We just don't have a clear picture yet. When you look at those images, this has just been an unprecedented historical flooding event there. Watching our coverage through some of our affiliates there, I mean, this is an area, keep in mind that today...
He wasn't there to help. He was there to be seen. And this time, the room refused to play along. It had been a catastrophic week for Texas. Massive rainfall on July 4th triggered flash flood emergencies across multiple counties, including Kerrville and Mason. The Guadalupe River rose by more than 26 feet in just 45 minutes, a terrifying surge that overwhelmed early responders and destroyed infrastructure in the blink of an eye. At a summer camp in Hunt, over 20 children went missing. Search teams deployed around the clock. Helicopters scouted washed-out roads, and boats were called in for high-water rescues. The entire state braced for a historic death toll. This was no time for distractions. And that's exactly what Harry became.
Texas, where the search for those missing intensifies with another round of rain on the way. Officials say at least 80 people have so far died in devastating floods. With the very latest, here's ABC's...
Eyewitnesses inside the Lake Travis Emergency Coordination Center described the mood as tense when the prince, flanked by a small security detail, walked into the restricted room without prior notice or clearance. While most attendees were unaware of his arrival beforehand, some assumed he had been quietly invited by someone higher up the chain.
More on this, let's bring in meteorologist Matthew Capucci. Great to have you back, Matthew. Why were these flash floods so intense?
Well, about 6 or 7 days ago, last Monday, we had a landfall of a tropical storm down in Mexico, completely unrelated, or at first so it seems.
But that assumption quickly turned into disbelief when Mayor Herring stood up, slammed a folder shut, and demanded the prince leave immediately. "You shouldn't be here," the mayor reportedly said in front of stunned officials. "This isn't a stage. People are dying." What followed was an awkward silence that left even seasoned relief officials speechless.
As he is on his way to one of the affected areas. Ed, what more do we know?
Well, Boris, we know that this is unraveling to be a nightmare situation for hundreds, if not thousands of families in the Texas Hill Country, Central Texas region where rainfall has fallen. Not only has, as what the lieutenant governor there said, that there are still some 20 children believed to be missing from that Camp Mystic, which is a popular camp that children attend during the summer here in Texas. But the sheriff is also now saying that there are at least 13 dead, and that death toll could continue to rise in the hours ahead as crews are...
Harry, according to one responder, looked genuinely confused, perhaps not fully grasping the level of seriousness surrounding the operation or the sheer fatigue on the faces in the room. The mayor didn't give him time to recover. Within minutes, the prince and his team were escorted out. The flood crisis was a turning point for Central Texas, but it also turned into an unexpected mirror for the prince's deepening disconnect from public duty. While he has built a reputation in recent years on causes ranging from mental health to wounded veterans, his actions in Texas were seen as hollow by those actually doing the work. These weren't causes one could parachute into for a photo op. This was a disaster zone. There were families missing entire households. First responders hadn't slept for days. And here was Harry, posing in rolled-up sleeves near rescue boats without knowing the names of the local towns underwater. When Harry's team attempted to spin the moment into a goodwill visit on social media, backlash was immediate. Residents who had seen him at a nearby relief tent took to platforms to describe his short visit as tone-deaf and disconnected. Some said he asked questions about the scene without offering help or resources. One volunteer, who asked not to be named, stated, "He shook hands, nodded a lot, then vanished. We thought maybe he came to donate something, but no. He just asked where the cameras were." Behind the scenes, officials scrambled to do damage control. Not for Harry, but for the community. Some worried that
Unfolding at this moment far surpasses what was experienced back in 1987. But from time to time, there are rivers that make their way through the Texas Hill Country where you have this intense amount of rainfall that falls in a very quick way, can cause devastating flooding like this. But Camp Mystic is a popular summer camp for
media attention would shift from the tragedy itself to the royal sideshow that had briefly hijacked the narrative. Several emergency coordination centers reportedly advised volunteers and staff to avoid speaking publicly about the encounter, hoping it wouldn't overshadow the real story. Dozens still missing, thousands displaced, and a region paralyzed by floodwaters. But the damage was done. Journalists picked up the story within hours, and the headlines wrote themselves. Texas mayor throws out Prince Harry during relief meeting wasn't just a headline, it was a warning. American cities facing calamity had no patience for symbolic gestures or imported influence. Mayor Joe Herring Jr., a seasoned local leader with a reputation for no-nonsense leadership, made it clear help was welcome. Publicity stunts were not. As the Hill Country region remained under emergency warnings, questions lingered about who exactly allowed Harry's entry into the restricted area. Some suggested it was a miscommunication involving a state-level official eager to attract global attention. Others hinted that Harry's team had pushed their way in without proper coordination. Either way, the fallout was clear. The prince had turned a moment of unity into one of embarrassment, and he had no one to blame but himself. In the aftermath of the meeting, the mayor gave a brief press update where he was asked directly about the incident. Without naming names, he said, "This week is about the people of Texas, not about visitors trying to be relevant. We need real help, not handshakes." This wasn't the first time Prince Harry's American ventures had drawn criticism, but it was arguably the most public rejection he had ever faced on U.S. soil. Unlike Hollywood circles where polite smiles often mask deeper resentment, Texas officials were unfiltered in their response. For many, this was a much-needed pushback against celebrity culture bleeding into crisis zones. As Harry boarded a private vehicle and left the emergency area, many couldn't help but wonder, what did he expect to achieve here? This wasn't a red carpet. This was a flood zone where real people were dying, and empty gestures weren't just unhelpful. They were disrespectful.
Those emergency crews some time to work and get into the areas most affected. But remember, as all this water accumulates, especially upstream, it has to flow downstream. So this becomes a very treacherous situation for those high water rescue teams, where these water levels in these rivers will be rising for some hours, even after the storm passes.
Yeah, especially as the ground is saturated. Hopefully some relief coming to those folks very soon. Ed Lavandera, we're awaiting an update from officials in south central Texas where multiple people are dead after historic flooding overnight. You can see some of the images here. This is from Kerr County.
As the convoy carrying Prince Harry drove away from the Lake Travis Relief Center, several onlookers watched in silence. It wasn't just disbelief they felt. It was disappointment. They had heard whispers all morning about someone big arriving to observe operations and assumed it might be a governor, senator, or military official. What they didn't expect was a former British royal walking into a war zone of water damage and grief, dressed like he was ready for a soft documentary shoot. The locals weren't impressed. In fact, they were insulted. And as more people pieced together what had actually happened inside the restricted meeting room, the public mood began to shift, not in sympathy, but in scorn. On social media, videos began circulating of the prince walking with a clipboard near debris-filled roads, wearing a concerned expression. But those who were actually present say he was never part of any planning session and certainly didn't contribute anything that warranted his presence in the heart of the crisis response team. Several emergency volunteers who helped ferry elderly residents from flooded houses said they had no clue why he was there. "He asked if we needed anything," said one responder. "I told him we needed dry socks and diesel fuel. He just nodded and walked off." The phrase "just nodded and walked off" would become symbolic of what many now saw as Harry's entire U.S. identity, present but absent, visible but pointless. Later that day, a separate team of search and rescue workers was ambushed by a group of reporters who had been following Harry's brief visit. Their questions were about the prince, not the missing children from Hunt or the rising waters of the Guadalupe River. One rescuer, visibly exhausted after pulling 2 survivors from an overturned van, responded, "Ask me about the people we're still trying to find, not about some prince who came here to wave." By evening, the mayor's decision to publicly eject Harry from the restricted meeting had made national headlines. Talk radio stations in Texas debated whether this was the wake-up call celebrity
says that the state is rushing all available resources to the area. Take a look at some video we're going to show you actually from a local resident's Ring camera that CNN obtained after a police officer came to her home around 6 this morning, warning her that it was time to get out.
Oh my God! Hey, there's people screaming in the river. We're evacuating everybody. Oh my God! Can you knock on your neighbor's door and tell them to get out now? The park's completely over. Oh my God! The people here
needed. Commentators on conservative networks praised the mayor's boldness, calling it Texan integrity at its finest. Liberal commentators, surprisingly, didn't defend Harry either. Some even questioned why he had not channeled his influence to raise funds or deliver supplies, instead choosing to make a surprise appearance that lacked any tangible benefit. Meanwhile, local businesses and churches had turned their parking lots into makeshift donation hubs. School buses were being used to move stranded families. Churches were handing out blankets. And through it all, no one saw Harry return. Not once. Not to help. Not to clarify. Not even to apologize for the disruption. Residents from flooded areas who had seen the prince briefly walking around with a small media crew felt used. One mother whose home had been destroyed said, "We don't need royal pity. We need diapers and clean water." I didn't see him bring either. This wasn't the kind of drama Harry's team knew how to control. Back in California, they had grown accustomed to carefully staged interviews, soft podcasts, and friendly media houses that painted him as misunderstood. But Texas didn't play by those rules. This was a place where you earned respect through work, not status. And the work wasn't done with microphones. It was done in mud and rain and heartbreak. For the people of Mason County, Harry's brief intrusion wasn't just a bad look. It was a betrayal of attention. Every minute spent photographing him could have been spent helping a real victim. Every journalist trailing him could have been documenting the faces of those still searching for missing relatives. Instead, the disaster zone had become a temporary royal distraction. In the days that followed, silence from Harry's side only deepened the outrage. No press release, no donation, no return visit. His team refused to answer questions from outlets that had confirmed his presence at the scene, and insider sources hinted that damage control strategies were being considered privately. But for the public, the silence was confirmation that this wasn't about Texas at all. It was about Harry. Even in the broader media landscape, sympathy was scarce. A popular morning show host commented, "If you walk into a battlefield without gear, you better be bringing medicine. If you bring nothing but cameras, don't be surprised when they throw you out." That sentiment echoed across state lines. The moment had exposed something bigger, the growing disconnection between symbolic celebrity gestures and the real pain felt by everyday people.